Every morning for 4 months, Marcus sat down at the same lunch table with the same brown paper bag, and every afternoon he walked home a little lighter than he should have. Not because the bag was empty, because he had handed it away. He was 9 years old, and the only thing he knew about hunger was that his friend Dion's had it, and he didn't. And that seemed like a problem he could do something about. What Marcus did not know was that someone was watching. What he could not have imagined was what that watching would one day cost her, and what it would one day give back to him. Some acts of kindness pass through a room without a sound. Others land in a person's chest like a stone in still water, and the rings just keep going. Miss Renee Carter had been teaching 3rd grade at Linden Elementary for 11 years. She had seen children fall asleep at their desks from exhaustion, children who flinched at loud voices, children who wore the same shirt 5 days in a row and looked away when she noticed. She knew the signs. She had learned to read a classroom the way some people read weather, quietly, from a distance, always watching for the thing that hadn't happened yet. So when she first noticed that Marcus Webb was finishing lunch without eating, she did not make a scene. She watched for 3 more days. By the end of that week, she understood what was happening, and she made a decision that nobody in that school building would know about for a very long time. Marcus was the kind of boy who made teachers glad they stayed in the profession. He was not loud or showy about it. He raised his hand with a small certainty, not urgency, as if he was offering rather than competing. He helped other kids find their dropped pencils. He held doors. His mother, Patricia, worked the front register at a dry cleaner 2 miles from the school, and she packed his lunch herself every morning before her shift started, before the sun was fully up, before Marcus was even awake. A sandwich, cut diagonal because he liked it that way. Chips in a small sealed bag. A piece of fruit. Sometimes a cookie if the week had gone well. It was not a rich lunch, but it was a good one. Assembled with care in a kitchen where the overhead light flickered when the refrigerator ran. Patricia was raising Marcus alone. His father had been gone since Marcus was 4. Gone in the way that means entirely no calls, no birthday cards, no reason given. She did not speak about it in front of Marcus, and he did not ask. What he knew was that his mother got up before dawn and came home after dark, and that there was always food in the house and clean clothes in his drawer, and he understood in the wordless way that 9-year-olds understand things, that these facts were connected to a cost he couldn't yet calculate. Dion Reeves had moved to the Linden district in October, mid-semester, the worst time to start at a new school. He was a slight boy with a gap between his front teeth and a way of going very still when he was trying not to be noticed. He sat next to Marcus in Miss Carter's class because the only empty seat was there, and Marcus had slid his pencil box 2 inches to the left to make more room without being asked to. That was how it started. By the end of the first week, they were talking through every transition, walking to specials together, saving each other's seats. What Marcus noticed by the end of the 2nd week was that Dion did not carry a lunch. Some days there was a government program tray waiting for him in the cafeteria line. Some days there wasn't. The paperwork for Dion's free lunch enrollment had gotten tangled somewhere in the transfer process, a clerical gap that the school was working to resolve but had not yet fixed. On the days the tray wasn't there, Dion went back to the table and unfolded a napkin and sat with his hands in his lap. He never said he was hungry. He was too proud or too new, or too aware of the gap between what he needed and what he was willing to ask for. Marcus noticed all of this without any of it being said aloud. The 2nd week of November, on a Tuesday with rain on the windows, he slid his paper bag across the table. "I'm not that hungry today," he said. Dion looked at the bag for a moment. "You sure?" "Yeah," Marcus said, and opened his library book to somewhere in the middle, so Dion could eat, without being watched. That was the first day. It was not the last day. It became the quiet arrangement between them. Never negotiated and never named. The way only children can build something significant out of pure instinct and not call it anything at all. Marcus would set his bag and Bill, open his book, and Dion would eat. On the days Dion's tray came through, Marcus ate his own lunch without comment, as if nothing had ever been given. The balance between them was careful and tender, and completely invisible to anyone who wasn't paying close attention. But Miss Carter was always paying close attention. If you have any idea what it means to watch a child choose someone else's comfort over their own, day after day without recognition or reward, tell the person sitting nearest to you right now. Some things deserve to be seen. She first confirmed what she suspected on a Wednesday in late November. She had waited until the cafeteria was loud and the children were settled. Then she made a slow circuit of the tables, the same circuit she made every day, pausing to ask about food preferences and collect stray wrappers, the ordinary business of a teacher supervising lunch. When she reached Marcus's table, she saw it plainly. Dion's was working through the sandwich from the paper bag, and Marcus was reading, his hands folded on the table in front of him, nothing to eat. She kept walking. She did not say anything. She did not look at Marcus in a way that would make him feel seen and then self-conscious. She just walked back to her position near the door and stood there for a moment, thinking. That afternoon, after the children had been dismissed and the classroom was quiet and the last bus had pulled away from the curb, she went to the school's main office and had a conversation with the cafeteria coordinator about Dion's enrollment paperwork. Then she drove to the grocery store on her way home and spent $14.32 of her own money on items she tucked into the bottom drawer of her desk the following morning before the first bell rang. What she had bought was 2 sleeves of peanut butter crackers, 4 granola bars, a small bag of almonds, a box of individual raisin packets, 2 pouches of apple slices, and a sleeve of whole-grain fig bars. It was not a feast. It was enough to make sure that a 9-year-old boy who had given away his lunch didn't go the rest of the day on an empty stomach. She arranged these items in the bottom drawer, under the construction paper and the spare pencils, and she said nothing about them to anyone. The plan she had formed was simple. When Marcus came back from lunch without having eaten, she would find a quiet reason to keep him a moment at the end of the activity, after his classmates had moved on, and offer him something from the drawer without making it a moment, without making it anything that required him to feel grateful or small. She had been a teacher long enough to know that how you give matters as much as what you give, and that a 9-year-old boy with quiet pride is a precise and delicate thing. The first time, she timed it so that 2 minutes before the class transitioned to reading groups, she asked Marcus to help her rearrange the book bin near the window. It was a task that took roughly 4 minutes and kept him apart from the group without signalling anything. When the other children were settled and the room had that particular late afternoon hum, she opened the bottom drawer and set a granola bar and a packet of apple slices on the corner of her desk within his reach. "I bought too many of these," she said, not looking at him. "Do me a favor and take that." Marcus looked at the granola bar for a second. He looked at her. She was already looking at the book bin, rearranging, not watching. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and picked it up. He ate it while he worked, and she continued not watching, and that was how that went. She did not praise him for taking it. She did not say anything about lunch or about Dion. She treated it the way you treat a glass of water set down for someone who is thirsty, a plain thing, a practical thing, the thing that was needed in the moment and nothing more. She kept it up for 4 months, not every single day, because Dion's tray came through reliably enough some weeks that Marcus ate his own lunch and there was no gap to fill. But on the days she could see the situation from across the cafeteria, the paper bag migrated across the table and the book opened in the hands. Folded, she made sure there was something in the bottom drawer. She rotated what she bought so it didn't become monotonous. She kept a running total in the small notebook she carried in her cardigan pocket, not obsessively, just so she didn't lose track. By February, the total was $47 and change. She had told her husband Raymond a vague version of the story, a student who skipped lunch sometimes, a little extra she kept on hand. Raymond had said, "That sounds like you," and gone back to the newspaper, and that was the whole conversation. She did not tell her department head or the school counselor or anyone else because she had considered it and decided that the moment it became an official thing, with documentation and meetings, it would stop being what it was, which was private and which was working. What she did not know, and could not have known, was that Marcus had started to understand what was happening. Children are not as opaque as adults assume. He had noticed the granola bars appeared on days when his bag went to Dion. He had noticed the arrangement with the book bin, the too many of Thee's explanation, the way she looked elsewhere. He was 9, but he was not simple. And he came from a mother who showed love through early mornings and diagonal sandwiches, and a light left on, so he knew what tending looked like when it was trying not to draw attention to itself. He didn't say anything about to his mother, not yet, because he didn't quite have the words for what it was, and also because saying it would make it large and official, and it was better small and quiet. He did say something to Dion once in late January, walking home after school. "Miss Carter's real good people," he said. Dion nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Real good." Neither of them said anything else about it. That was enough. The thing that changed everything happened on a Thursday in March, not at school but at the dry cleaner where Patricia worked. A woman came in with a winter coat, a good one, dark wool, the kind that costs what 2 weeks of Patricia's salary would cover. The woman was perhaps 60, well-dressed, with reading glasses pushed up on her head and the particular posture of someone accustomed to being helped promptly. Patricia took the coat and wrote the ticket and asked the standard questions about stains and alterations. The woman mentioned she was picking up for her son as well. His name was Beaumont. She gave the ticket number. Patricia located the order. A set of pressed dress shirts and 2 pairs of trousers, brought them out on the hanger. While she was wrapping the shirts in the tissue the dry cleaner used for dress orders, the woman said, not unfriendly but with the idle quality of someone filling silence, "Does it take long to learn this work?" Patricia had heard versions of this question before. She answered it the way she always did, pleasantly and without rancor. "Take some practice. I've been here 8 years, so I know the machines pretty well." The woman said something vague and affirmative and took her items and left. Patricia did not think about the interaction for more than a few seconds after the door closed. Some customers were like that. It was nothing. What she could not have known was that the woman, whose name was Vera Beaumont, was the mother of Gerald Beaumont, the man who owned the company that owned the property where the dry cleaner's building stood. Gerald Beaumont had inherited a real estate portfolio from his father and spent the past 20 years turning it from a modest local holding into something considerably larger. He was not the kind of wealthy that made the news, because he had a preference for privacy. He served on the board of 3 community organizations, quietly, attended his mother's church when he was in town, and kept his name off things when he could. Vera Beaumont mentioned the woman at the dry cleaner to her son that evening over dinner, not the particulars of the exchange, just the woman behind the counter, industrious, polite, 8 years on the job. She mentioned it because she had been struck by something, though she couldn't name exactly what. Gerald said it sounded like the place did good work and left it there. This was March. The thing that connected this dinner to a 9-year-old boy giving away his sandwiches had not yet surfaced. It was still travelling toward them all, the way a decision made months ago keeps moving through. Time long after the person who made it has stopped thinking about it. Renee Carter's moment came by accident, the way most honest things do. It was the first week of April, a parent-teacher conference evening, and she had a 30-minute window between appointments that she used to organize the reading folders on her desk. The door to her classroom was open, and the hallway was busy with parents moving between teachers. And one of the parents who appeared in her doorway was Patricia Webb. Patricia was not scheduled to see her that night. She had Marcus's English teacher at 6:15 and his math teacher at 6:45. She had stopped in the doorway because she had seen the nameplate and recognized it, and she knocked on the frame to be polite. Miss Carter looked up and waved her in. "I just wanted to say thank you," Patricia said. "Marcus talks about your class all the time. He says you're his favorite." It was a kind thing to say, and Renee accepted it the way she accepted most compliments about her work, with genuine warmth and a deflection back toward the child. "He's a wonderful kid," she said. "He's got so much kindness in him. Real natural kindness. The kind you can't teach." Patricia looked at her for a moment. There was something in the way the teacher said it that felt weighted, like the words were resting on something underneath them. "Is everything all right with him?" Patricia asked. "Is he doing well?" Renee paused. She had not planned this conversation, and she had not planned to have it this way, in a 30-minute window in a busy hallway. But she had also been carrying this for 4 months, and this woman was Marcus's mother, and she deserved to know, so she told her. Not the full accounting, not the $47 and the notebook and the rotating snacks, just the shape of it. Marcus had been giving his lunch to his friend Dion, quietly and consistently for months, and she had been making sure he had something to eat in the afternoon. And she wanted Patricia to know both of those things, because her son was a boy, worth knowing completely. Patricia stood very still while she listened. When Renee finished, Patricia pressed her lips together and was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He never told me." "I don't think he wanted you to worry," Renee said, "or to feel like you needed to do anything differently. I think he was just solving a problem he could see." Patricia put her hand over her mouth. She stood that way for 3 or 4 seconds. Then she took her hand down and straightened up and said, "How much did you spend?" Renee shook her head. "That doesn't matter." "It matters to me," Patricia said. "Tell me what it was." Renee looked at her for a moment. $47, she said. Patricia opened her purse. "I'm going to pay you back." "You are absolutely not," Renee said. And she said it in the voice she used when she meant it completely. Gentle and total. The voice of someone who has already decided. Patricia stood there looking at her. "Then at least let me tell you something," Patricia said. "That boy in there, he's going to do something real with his life, and whoever helped him get there is going to be part of it. I want you to know I understand that." Renee said nothing. She nodded once, and Patricia nodded back, and they held each other's gaze for a moment the way women do when something has passed between them that does not have a cleaner container. Then the next family appeared in the doorway, and the evening moved forward. Patricia did not say anything to Marcus about the conversation that night. She needed a day with it first. She needed to understand what she was feeling, which was not simple. There was the pride, clean and high, the kind that made her chest ache. There was something else underneath it, something that took her until the following morning in the car before she could name it. Grief. A little of it, not simple. Not grief at what Marcus had done, but grief at the gap she hadn't seen. Her son had been going through his day, handling a weight she hadn't known was there, and she had packed the same lunch each morning in the flickering kitchen and sent him off and thought she had covered him. She had covered him. Miss Carter had covered what was left. Patricia sat in the parking lot of the dry cleaner for several minutes before her shift. She was not crying. Exactly. She was doing the thing that comes before crying, the pressing down, the settling. Then she got out of the car and went in and started the machines. She talked to Marcus that Friday evening after dinner, when the dishes were done and the table was clear, and there was that quiet stretch before his bath. She sat across from him and asked him a simple question. Why hadn't he told her about Dion? Marcus looked at the table for a moment. Then he looked up at her. "Because you already packed my lunch," he said. "You do that every day. I didn't want you to have to do more." Patricia looked at her son for a long time, 9 years old and already trying to protect her from an extra task. "Marcus," she said, "you could have told me." "I know," he said. "I just thought I could handle it." She reached across the table and put her hand over his. "You could," she said. "You did." She paused. "Miss Carter helped you handle it." He nodded, studying the table again. "I know," he said very quietly. "I kind of figured it out." Patricia squeezed his hand once. "Good," she said. "Then you know something important. You know what it looks like when somebody takes care of you without making you feel small about it. You hold on to that. You remember how it felt." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "It felt like nothing," he said. "Like she just did it and it wasn't a big thing." "That's exactly right," his mother said. That's the whole lesson. Dion's enrollment paperwork cleared in April, and from that point forward his tray came through reliably every day. The paper bag stayed in front of Marcus, the book still opened. But now Marcus ate his lunch beside his friend instead of in place of him, and the table had a different quality, settled, sufficient. Both of them fed. Miss Carter watched this from her rotation near the cafeteria door, and she did not mark it or celebrate it. It was simply how things were now. By the end of April, she had cleared the bottom drawer of the snacks she'd been keeping there. She put the construction paper back. The drawer returned to being a drawer. What came next did not come from Renee, and it did not come from Patricia, and it did not come from anything as neat as a plan. It came the way most things come, sideways, from a direction nobody was watching. Gerald's company did a periodic review of its commercial properties each spring, and during that review, a property manager flagged that one of the retail units, the dry cleaners building on a street called Kellner, was approaching a lease renewal. The lease was held by the dry cleaner's owner, a man named Doug, who had been at that location for 14 years. The review was routine, but Gerald, for reasons he didn't analyze too closely, asked to see the personnel file on the building's long-term staff. There was no personnel file on the building's staff because the staff belonged to the dry cleaner, not to Beaumont's company. But the question got passed along, and Doug, the owner, mildly confused, produced a list of employees and their tenure out of the spirit of good landlord relations. Patricia Webb's name was on it. 8 years. Gerald looked at the name. He thought about what his mother had said in March, the woman behind the counter, industrious, polite, 8 years on the job. He mentioned it to his mother at their next Sunday dinner. Vera said yes, that was the one. Gerald said something non-committal and they moved on. This was a week before the end of the school year. The actual thing happened because of a community organisation Gerald served on the board of, a small non-profit that provided educational grants for children in under-resourced districts. It was called the Kellner Community Foundation, named for the street where it had started. They were holding their annual Spring Award night at a local event space, and Gerald was expected to attend and say a few words. He almost didn't go. He had a work dinner that conflicted. He rearranged it at the last minute because his mother told him he should, which was the reason. He rearranged most things he almost didn't do. He sat at a round table near the back and listened to a program director talk about the grants awarded that year, the schools they had partnered with, the teachers and students who had been nominated. When the program director began reading from a nomination letter that a parent had submitted, Gerald settled into a comfortable half-attention, the kind you give to speeches at events where you have other things on your mind. Then the program director read a few lines. She read about a teacher who had spent 4 months discreetly feeding a student who was giving his lunch away. She read about a boy who chose his friend's hunger over his own every day without being asked, without anyone knowing. Gerald stopped thinking about the work dinner. He was fully in the room. The name on the nomination was Patricia. The school was Linden Elementary, which was 2 blocks from the building on Kellner Street. Gerald sat very still for the rest of the program. On the way out, he stopped to speak to the foundation's executive director, a woman named Carol, who had been running the organization for 6 years and who knew him well enough to read his face when he had something specific in mind. The foundation reached out to Linden Elementary the following week. The principal, a man named Mr. Holt, received a call from Carol explaining that Renee had been nominated for the foundation's annual Teaching Recognition Award, and would the school be willing to host a small presentation. Mr. Holt said yes before she finished the sentence. Renee was told briefly that she had been nominated for a community recognition thing, which she registered with the mild appreciation of a person who does not think much of awards but is too polite to say so. She was not told who had nominated her. Patricia had submitted the letter quietly, 3 weeks after the conference night conversation, without mentioning it to Marcus or to anyone at the school. She had written it in the evenings over the course of a week, cutting and restarting, trying to find the words that were not too large for the thing she was describing, which was not a grand gesture but a quiet one. A drawer with granola bars in it, a task invented to protect a boy's pride. She had almost not sent it. She sent it because Marcus had told her that Miss Carter made him feel like the thing she did was nothing. Patricia believed that things that felt like nothing to the receiver sometimes cost the giver everything, and she wanted someone to know the cost. The presentation was held on the last Friday of the school year, in the gymnasium, with the third-grade class seated on the floor in their rows and the parents gathered at the back. Gerald stood at the front, next to Carol and Mr. Holt, and said the things he had prepared to say about the foundation and about teaching and about the specific ordinary courage of a person who fills a gap before anyone else has named it. He gave Renee a framed certificate and an envelope. She accepted both with the composure of someone who was keeping her expression from doing something she hadn't approved. He shook her hand and held it a moment longer than was strictly ceremonial, and she understood from that extra second that he was not simply a man reading from a foundation script. Then Gerald looked out at the children seated on the gymnasium floor, and he asked if Marcus Webb was in the room, and Marcus raised his hand from the third row with his small, certain quality, not urgency, offering rather than competing. Gerald said he had heard what Marcus had done, and that he wanted him to know it had not gone unnoticed. He left it at that. The gymnasium was very quiet. Marcus looked at his hands. Then he looked up at Miss Carter, who was standing at the front, still holding the envelope, and she was already looking at him, and she nodded once, the smallest nod, and he nodded back. After the program, while the room was sorting itself into clusters of parents and children, and the gym filled with that particular end-of-year noise, Gerald made his way to Patricia, who was standing near the back with a look on her face that she was managing carefully. He introduced himself. She knew who he was, because Carol had given her a brief summary before the event. He said, without preamble, that the Kellner Community Foundation offered a number of small business grants and vocational opportunity funds, and that he also had a number of commercial relationships in the area, and that if she was ever interested in talking about her situation, he would welcome that conversation. He handed her a card, a plain one, just his name and a number. Patricia looked at the card for a moment. She looked at him. "You own the building my dry cleaner is in," she said. It was not a question. He said he did. She said, "I think you should know that I've been happy there for 8 years. He said he was glad to hear it, she said. "And I'm not looking for someone to feel sorry for me," he said, with a small measure of feeling that he was not offering sorry. "I'm offering what I have," he said. "You can decide what you want to do with it." Patricia put the card in her purse and didn't say anything else about it that evening. She called the number on a Tuesday 2 weeks later, in June, while Marcus was at summer camp for the morning. She and Gerald talked for 40 minutes. He had, in addition to the commercial properties, a foundation program that helped working parents access subsidized childcare and education planning. He had a network of small business owners who had gone through a mentorship track his foundation funded. He was not trying to give her anything she hadn't asked for. He was making a map of what existed and telling her where the doors were. She took notes in the small notebook she used for grocery lists and appointment reminders. At the end of the call, she said she needed to think about some of it. He said that was fine. He said the foundation was not going anywhere. She said she appreciated that. They hung up. She sat with the notebook for a while, looking at her handwriting. Then she got up and started cooking before Marcus came home. It took her until September to make the full decision, and she made it in pieces over those summer months, the way she made most large decisions methodically, checking each part. She enrolled in a small business certificate program through the community college, 2 evenings a week, for which the foundation provided a stipend that covered her childcare for Marcus on those nights. She put in a notice at the dry cleaner in October, respectful and without drama, giving Doug 6 weeks. She spent the following spring, with the business she had planned through the winter, opening a small alterations and tailoring shop in a modest ground floor unit 2 miles from Linden Elementary. The Kellner Foundation helped with the first 3 months of rent as part of a new business support program. The rest she funded herself, from savings and from a small business loan she negotiated on her own terms. "The sign in the window," said Patricia Alterations. She had written the name out by hand first on a piece of notebook paper to see how it looked. Marcus was 10 when the shop opened and 11 when it stopped feeling new. He did his homework on a stool behind the counter after school while she worked. He learned to thread a needle the winter he turned 10, and could hem a pair of trousers passably by 11. He was not interested in tailoring particularly, but he was interested in being near his mother, and the shop was hers in the complete way that the dry cleaner had never been. He watched her manage it. He watched her handle difficult customers with the same composure she'd always had, pleasantly and without rancour, and he watched her do the books at the small desk in the back and make decisions about inventory and equipment with a careful deliberateness of someone who has learned to trust her own thinking. He was watching something be built. He understood this, even if he couldn't say so. Dion came to visit the shop after school on occasion. He and Marcus remained close through elementary school and into middle school, the friendship deepened by the particular weight of what it had been built on, a paper bag and a quiet arrangement, and the wordless knowledge between them that one had carried the other when the other needed carrying. Dion's family stabilized in the years after that first hard year. His mother found steady work. The apartment they moved to in 4th grade had a kitchen with a working stove, and Dion ate lunch at school every day through the rest of elementary, never again without a tray. He did not speak often about those months in 3rd grade. When he spoke about them at all, it was with a plainness that matched what Marcus had given him, without drama, without debt, as a thing that had happened and had been handled. Renee retired from Linden Elementary 8 years after that gymnasium presentation. She stayed for 8 more years after Marcus's 3rd grade class had moved on, through new cohorts and new reading curriculums and 2 different principals. The bottom drawer of her desk over those 8 years held construction paper and pencils, and occasionally something from the grocery store that found its way to a child who needed it, and she never made a policy out of it, and never put a number on it, and never told anyone unless telling someone was going to help. She moved to a house in a quieter part of the city with Raymond, and she planted a garden in the backyard, tomatoes and green beans and 1 ambitious row of sunflowers that Raymond tended more than she did. She got a card in the mail from Patricia every December for years. Inside was a short note, and sometimes a photograph of Marcus. The last photograph she received before the cards stopped, because Marcus was grown by then, and Patricia was busy, and life moves at a pace that outruns correspondence, showed a young man of about 17 standing in front of the alteration shop with his mother, both of them in good coats, both of them smiling in the particular way of people who have something they did not always have. Renee put it on her refrigerator. Raymond asked who it was. She said it was a student. He said the kid looked like a serious person. She said he had always been a serious person, ever since the beginning. Marcus grew up knowing 3 things about kindness that most people take longer to learn. The first was that kindness given quietly, without an audience, without a ledger, is the only kind that costs anything real. The second was that when someone helps you in a way that lets you keep your dignity, the correct response is not to minimize what they did, but to carry it forward, to understand the weight of it, and to someday do the same for someone else. The third thing he knew was particular and specific and his. That teacher he'd had in the 3rd grade had bought $47 worth of granola and apple slices and peanut butter crackers, and had put them in a drawer under the construction paper, and had invented reasons to keep him a minute after the class moved on, and had handed him things while looking the other way, and had never once made him feel the size of what she'd given him. He knew this was what love looked like when it was working correctly. He knew it because his mother had told him. One Friday evening, when the dishes were done and the table was clear, that the thing that felt like nothing was the whole lesson. He never forgot it. He was 9 years old, and then he was not, and the lesson was still there, small and plain and permanent, like a stone dropped in still water, still making rings. The alterations shop on that quiet street closed its door on a Saturday in late October, not from failure, but because Patricia had outgrown it. She moved to a larger space 3 blocks over, with 2 machines instead of 1 and a seamstress assistant she had trained herself. The sign in the new window still said Patricia Alterations. She had written the name out by hand again, first on notebook paper, to see how it looked. It looked the same as before. She put up the sign and turned on the machines and started the day. In the corner of the new shop, on a small shelf near the back desk, sat a granola bar still in its wrapper, placed there by Marcus the week the shop opened. She had never eaten it. She had never moved it. It was not a shrine or a ceremony. It was just the thing that reminded her, when she needed reminding, of the drawer and the woman and the boy who had started all of it, by doing the plainest, most costly thing he knew how to do. She kept it because some things deserved to stay where they can be seen. Have you ever had someone help you in a way that made you feel like it was nothing? Leave a word about it below. And when you're ready for another story about a quiet act that changed everything, it's waiting for you here.